So today's webinar is going to be recorded. A couple of other small housekeeping items. We are going to be in listen-only mode. If you have any questions, please ask them in the chat box or in the questions. If you have an echo, please try. You might want to check your speakers on your side, or make sure you haven't got it turned on twice, and we can adjust accordingly. Okay, we're going to get started. So today's topic is how can I use the ColorCards apps to support my telepractice. We're going to start with 3 quick poll questions so that I can get a little bit of an understanding as to who we have available in the webinar. So the first question, if you could just indicate who you are, which will help tailor the webinar accordingly. Great, so mostly speech language pathologists, speech language therapists, and a couple of other teachers and health professionals. Great. The next question, have you heard of ColorCards before? Which most of you have by the look of it. Great. And finally, have you used any of the ColorCards apps before? Okay, so most people haven't used the apps before. So I will make sure that I really cover the basics with how the apps work, as well as making sure that we go into enough detail. Please do stop and ask questions in the question panel, and my colleague Melanie will either answer them back in the chat box to you, or I will answer them as we go if it's relevant to everybody in the group. Okay, so let's get started. Oh, very important detail actually. One thing I wanted to let you know about is that there is a special offer on at the moment where you can buy any of the 5 apps for either $1.99 or £1.49. This is a special offer just the next 24 hours. So please take advantage. You can buy them in iTunes. All of the apps are covered by this special, so please do take advantage. The plan for today is to give an overview of ColorCards apps, and I'm going to make sure we put a bit of detail on that, seeing that most people haven't used the apps before. We're then going to explore the reporting function, but specifically we're going to look at how you share reports between clients and therapists. And then look at some ways about using the apps in sessions online, some of the practical things. So hopefully that's useful, but please do ask questions as we go. There are 5 apps in the ColorCards app range. Everyday objects, what can you see? And then there are 3 sequencing apps. Basic sequences, 4-step sequences, and 6 8-step sequences. So obviously the sequencing apps are graded in terms of complexity. They've been designed for use with a caseload, so there are ways of managing multiple students or clients, which I will show you shortly. And one of the things that I think is key is that they've been designed to use by and with therapists. So that's quite a key design consideration that was made in terms of how we set up the app, so that our therapist helps set up how it works and run through the app. So I'm seeing a couple of notes come up about echo, so bear with me for 2 seconds. We might just go and pause. I'm going to try an alternative microphone and see whether that improves things. Bear with me, everybody, for a minute. I'm just trying a different microphone. I hope that may have made things a little better. If you don't mind just letting me know, those of you, there were 3 or 4 people who were reporting that the echo got a lot worse. Can you let me know if that's any better? I think it's a little bit better. So apologies for that. I'm not sure why we've just run a webinar the hour before. We didn't have any trouble, so I'm not sure reason for it, but I'm going to try probably to slow down a little bit to make it a little easier to understand, to compensate a little for the echo. Apologies about that. I'm not sure. Actually, I have a look at an idea that might be happening.
Okay, I think we figured it out. Sorry, we had the microphones on for both of our computers. I think that, okay, we've solved the problem. Okay, it's good news. We're a tech company. I can see everybody's relief in the chat boxes. We're just as relieved. Okay, great. Let me start from scratch with this slide here. Okay, so as I said, the ColorCards app range, it's 5 apps designed for use with a caseload and to be used with therapists or by therapists or teachers, and can certainly be used in conjunction with your ColorCards box sets if you have those available. You're able to measure progress with the apps either against goals that you might have set, and there is a very detailed in-app reporting structure which we're going to look at, where you can record the student's performance with tasks, but also keep note of observations that you may have had during sessions or that the family may have had. Okay, at this point, I'm going to launch and show you the apps so that you can see how they work. Bear with me while we just do a quick screen switch. Okay, great. So in a second, you're going to see, great, I can see that you can see my screen there. I'll just wait for it to switch over. Okay, so we're in the first app. This is basic sequences. I'm going to just show you basic sequences from the 3 sequences range because they follow the same principle. They just like to have more and more items in each sequence. The app has 4 different tasks or features that you can access from the home screen. We either have ordering, predicting, describing, and the view cards option. In ordering, as the name might suggest, your task is to put the pictures in the correct order, and you're presented with 3 images which are the same images you'd be familiar with from the ColorCards box sets. So I can move those into the correct order, and at the moment it will then show me whether that's correct or not. I get some reinforcement through the coloured shading on each of the squares. What I can then do is indicate whether that was correct with help, or incorrect. So this is in addition to the reporting that's happening automatically within the app, and is designed for either self-monitoring or for the therapist to indicate whether somebody was correct or incorrect, because I'm sure, like me, you'll have had plenty of examples with why the sequence makes perfect sense in the reverse order to the way that the game was set up, and why your client would have a really great rationale as to why that be the case. So here we go again. So I just need to move the cards into the order in which they belong, and they are graded from easy, medium to hard. This is one of the more complex examples in the app. And if I'm correct, I can tap on the check mark and have that confirmed. And then we'll just do one more, and then I'm going to show you the report for this feature. And one of the other nice features that you can see in the top right-hand corner is that I can record a description, or I can record while I'm using this as to what's happening in the images. Okay, so you might have noted too there's a little counter in the left-hand corner at the bottom which tells you how many tasks you've done. And then after completing all of the tasks that you've decided to assign to your client, you get to watch a nice little reward animation. I can then view the results. So here you go, here are the results for Jenny for this task here for ordering, and I'm able to view the specific responses that she made for each of the sets of cards, and I can see what order she put them in, and whether that was correct, and how difficult they were as well. And I have the capacity to add in notes for each of those sequences, so there might be something I want to keep track of. And in addition to that, I can get an overall view on how Jenny did in terms of her accuracy, how long she spent on that task, and the number of sequences. So these are going to be all important things if I'm my student is working in isolation from me and is sharing reports, which we'll go into in a little more detail. Okay, coming back to the other games, I'll just quickly show you what they are so that you know what they are. We won't play the full game. We have predicting, and predicting serves to promote your student or your client verbalizing or even writing about what happens next. So they see, in this case, 3 cards in a sequence, and they're asked to predict what the 4th card or the 4th step in this sequence would be. So again, you can use the recording feature in the top right-hand corner. You could have the student write it down or type it across to you if you're online for your session. You really have both options. So this, the student might propose, next the boy gets into bed, and then I can record that response and then indicate whether that's correct or incorrect. So that's the prediction activity. And then you have the describing activity where you're shown each sequence step by step with a single card on the screen at a time, and you're prompted to describe what's happening in each of those images as they appear on your screen. So that, again, you have the option of recording. So there's a lot of consistent tools that are available from game to game. The recording, for example, that goes behind it. Finally, you have the option to view deck, and that really is a way of just quickly accessing the image files that you have available. I'm now going to show you the next step, which is everyday objects. And this is similar as the original box set. You have 2 games in addition to the view cards, which we saw in basic sequences, describing and reveal. I'm going to show you describing. In this case, you're presented with the cards that you pre-set up in the app, and you're prompted to describe what you see in the picture, and you can then indicate whether that was correct with help, or incorrect again, and you have the recording tool available as well. So you can see it works like that. So I named it as torch, tap was correct, and then it moves to the next picture. In this example, I just put in 2 to quickly show you how the game works, but you can load up as many of the pictures in the photo library that you want and add your images as well, which is another option. Here, after you've completed the task, you get the nice reward animation, which is a nice reward. You can also turn that off if that's not appropriate. And then, just like in basic sequences, you're able to view a report. So that's everyday objects. What I want to do quickly then is show you what can you see, which has a slightly different approach. in that what you do is you're shown, it's a little bit more of a game than the other two apps. A picture is hidden beneath a series of flip pages, and as I tap on them, or as the child taps on them, each section of the reveal shows more and more of the picture, and as the child works out what it is, he or she can name that and, of course, mark it correct or incorrect. So there's 4 or 5 reveals per image that is shown, and that goes on. So, for example, if they were just able to see this corner of fur in the left-hand corner, they may want to say, oh, it's a cat, and get that correct straight away. So you can say correct without having to do the whole reveal. So that's how What Can You See works. What I want to show you now is some of the tools that sit across the series of apps, including the ability to set up a caseload and how to customize the content. We're going to do all of that in What Can You See, just so I can show you. So I tap on the spanner in the bottom left-hand corner, which is the settings or the setup section, and then you'll arrive in the setup. We're going to create a new student. So as I said, you can have a number of students that use the app, and you can switch between them. So if I was to add a new student, in this case we'll add Melody, who's my colleague here. I can add a picture either from the photo gallery or from the camera. Let's choose the photo gallery. Now, well, this is my other colleague Kasha, but we'll use a photo of her for this case. Tap on save, and then I can switch users to being Melanie. So I can add students in this way. I can also set up the activities for each student. In that case, I go to Activity Setup, Game Setup, and then you'll see a photo library, and I choose which images that I want Melanie to use. So I tap on the pictures to select or deselect the ones for her. So, for example, for Melanie, I'm going to use the saw, the lamp, and the ball. I tap on those, and they'll be selected. But I also want to add some content that's not in the app. So I tap on the plus sign in the top right-hand corner, and this is where I can add a card. You can label the card as to what it is, let's say glass in this case, and then take a picture with the camera on the iPad or choose from the gallery on the device. Let's see, oops, there's the computer, there's the glass. And sorry, I'm doing it upside down. Here we go, use photo. And then I assign that to a level of difficulty. We'll say it's easy in that case. And then I'll see that that's sitting in the easy category when I come back to viewing the whole photo library that's available to me. And then I can tap on that glass to add it to the items that I want to use in my game. So then we go back, and so that will be the 4 or 5 images that we use for Melanie's task. The next thing I want to show you, which as I said is consistent across all of the apps, is the reporting feature. In this case, because we're already logged in or set up as Melanie's setup, it's going to show Melanie's reports. She hasn't done any yet, so we can see that. So that's where we go. But let me switch students then. And Jenny, and then we come in to switching to Jenny and her reports. Maybe Jenny's reports have been turned off. Let me come into, I've got all of Jenny's reports set up in basic sequences. So let's have a look at them in there, that might be easier. So I come into reports, there's Jenny there, and we can tap on her and then we'll see her reports. Here's what she did earlier today, for example. It's just coming up on your screen. There you go. So we can see the total time spent on an activity, the total sequences that she's completed, and her percentage correct. We can then drill down into the individual sessions, a little bit like the reports that you saw earlier. So Jenny's had played twice today. Let's have a look at the later one at 4 o'clock, and we can see her report from 4 o'clock. So I can go back in and have a look at the specific reports. So that reporting function is common across all of the apps and really makes it easier for using multiple apps with students, but also makes it easier in terms of going in, being able to drill down into specific activities on different days. So I'm going to now switch back to my PowerPoint. Bear with me for a second. I'm just going to wait. There's a little bit of a lag on the screen to catch up. There you go. Okay. So we've, now all my automatic windows open up. Okay. So as I said, each app has a consistent reporting tool where you can set up a new ID for each patient or client, personalize and annotate those notes, and then come back and review them. You can see that here's another example for somebody who's done multiple sessions, so I can see each of those across time, look at progress between sessions, and then drill down into his reports for each of those separate activities. Now, you have a couple of options in regards to sharing of the reports. You can send the reports after each game via email. So after each game finishes, the screen on the left pops up, which shows you a dashboard of 5 options: restart game, manage game, view results, email report, or export audio. So I can directly email the report if I don't need to view the results on the spot, or I can go in and view the results and then email them out. One of the things that I think is really unique about this app is the ability to also export the audio that was recorded. So you saw throughout the app the ways that we could record a description of cards or sequences or predictions. So you saw how we can do that. Now that audio all gets saved with the particular screen that was on at the time of that recording. So I can export that out. So I think that's a fantastic way that a client could be working independently in between sessions perhaps, and then share those files, audio files, as well as the report with their clinician. So how can I use this app with these apps with my clients? A couple of options. The client can buy the apps, and now that they're on sale, is probably a great opportunity to buy those at a reasonably low cost. And then the therapist can have the app as well. And then between the client and the therapist, they can share reports via emails, but the therapist can also share task lists or prescriptions as to what to do with the client so that they can set up. So it may be, for example, do 5 different sequences, choose the boy with the ball, the lady making the bed, the woman doing the flower arranging, and so on. So you can be quite specific, but you can also share images by email that you want to then use in these tasks. So you could send over 20 relevant photos that the clinician had taken or had on file, send those over to the student or the client, and have them bring them into the app to use alongside what can you see, the sequences, or everyday objects apps. Alternatively, and perhaps fitting in with this topic a little more, the therapist can also use the app on his or her screen and share that with their client. So a little like we just did, where I had the iPad shared reflected on my screen, and you were able to see it. So that's another option as to how you could use it in online sessions. So what do you need to bear in mind if you're sharing screens from your iPad online? You have to remember that the client can't tap on the app, which may seem sometimes a little counterintuitive, and that they would need to, you'd be the one tapping on the app, and that it certainly works better, in my opinion, for certain apps and tasks. So I think, for example, it works really nicely for everyday objects or what can you see, whereas the task is based around one central image at a time. And the goal or the task for the client is either description or a verbal response. Within sequencing apps, it's a little more difficult for something where you have to rearrange items on a screen, but certainly not impossible. But I think lends itself nicely to the predicting task that you saw, where the child needs to predict what happens on that fourth card. A couple of things that you need to bear in mind, there does tend to be a slight lag. So for example, today while I'm running the webinar, as we all learned earlier, I've got two screens up at one time, so I'm watching the second screen to try to match my timing to what you can all see, so that there's not too much of an obvious lag. But that's a little bit more difficult when you just have one screen, but you have to bear that in mind. But many of you will know that. And I think it's great if the client has the app to use between sessions. And you saw the ways in which you can share reports. If you're sharing screens from your iPad, here are a couple of ways that you can do that. Hopefully this is quite an up-to-date list. What we did today, I'm using a Mac, and we used QuickTime. So I plugged my iPad into the computer and I'm mirroring that to you via running QuickTime on my computer, which comes with the Mac. There are also 4 or 5 different apps or agents that allow you to reflect your screen, including Reflector, AirServer, Annotate.net, Mirroring 360, and Xmirage. So there are all ways that you can mirror your iPad onto a screen without connecting it, but you need to pair the device and the computer. And finally, the other way to do it would be using a document camera. Of course, there's going to be a little bit of glare, and it's sometimes a little easier, but a little more difficult. But what you will benefit from is the client seeing where your finger is pointing. Excuse me. So, a real whistle-stop tour as to the apps, and some helpful suggestions, hopefully, on how you can integrate those when working online with your clients. Please do visit the link on the screen at the moment for more resources, including different ways to use the app in curriculum-based activities. I'm going to remind you of the special offer. Please do take advantage. And finally, let me answer any questions that you might have before we go offline. We're here for a little while, so if you have any questions, please pop them in the question box or pop them onto in the chat box, and we'll do our best to answer them. Okay, a good question about whether the apps will suit to adults. And certainly these apps are, my focus today was really talking about using them with children. But there's no reason why you couldn't use the apps with adults. One of the nice things, as you saw, is that you can personalize the content. So by adding in images that are more relevant to an adult client group, you would certainly be able to personalize those. But in addition, there are lots of apps available for adults that you might find useful. If you want to drop us an email, I'm happy to send you some suggestions as to apps that might be relevant to working with adults. Another question is about whether there's plans to have the apps on Android. You're certainly not the first person to ask that question, and it's something we've passed back to ColorCards as a popular request. So watch this space. Okay, and another question about asking about whether you can send or use iPhone photos on the apps. Absolutely. So if you're using the app on an iPad, which is the app is for iPads, and the photos were on the iPhone, you could do a couple of things. One which would be to bring the photos onto your shared iTunes account and then drag them into the iPad's photo library. You could do it that way. But to be honest, probably what I would do would be to, I think seems a little easier, is to actually email them from myself to another account or the same account even, or Dropbox them from your iPhone to your iPad. If you want the steps as to how to do that, we're happy to provide that. Another question about whether the apps have more complex activities that might be advanced for use with adults. Certainly, I showed basic sequences today, but there are two other sequences apps, sequences 4-step and sequences 6 and 8-step. And by the time you're getting to sequences 6 and 8 steps, not only is the content probably a little bit more suitable for an adult client group, but the nature of sequencing an 8-step is much more complex than a 4-step, as you would know. So that may well lend itself better to an adult client group if your clients were at that level. But you can adjust the images that are there, or you may, in parallel, create tasks around them that were more complex. So, for example, if you're using everyday objects, or what can you see, and you were showing everyday objects that you wanted the client to name, you could also working on their semantic description skills, or you could be playing like a barrier game, or you could be working on compensatory strategies for aphasia, for naming difficulties, for example. So in that way, they've been designed to be quite flexible. You can do things such as turn off the reward animation. You can turn off the highlighting colors, the sounds, if you felt that made it easier for working with adults. And finally, a nice comment from one of our attendees saying that the webinar has been helpful, so thank you, we appreciate them, and that you think it's going to be useful to use with children with autism. So I really hope that's the case. Please do pass on any feedback that you have once you start using them. And another question, which is about whether there will be any documentation about having completed the webinar. There certainly will be an email sent and a copy of the presentation that you will receive after the webinar. If there's something more specific that you need, please let us know and we can do our best to help. Okay, another question about creating your own sequences. Absolutely. You are able to completely ignore all of the content that's already in the apps, and that's across the 5 apps, so the sequencing ones and the object-based apps. And you can create your own content, so you could take a sequence pertinent to that client or pertinent to whatever the task or the goals are that they're working on, just in the way that you saw me create the glass in one of the objects apps. The process is the same for the sequencing apps. So another question about CELs. If you're, I don't know as to your regulations for personal development in your state or your country, but I'm certain that you'd be able to describe the content and self-certify if that's an option where you are. I'm not sure, but we can certainly share the PowerPoint presentation if you require that, or further information about what was included. Great, so thank you for all of those questions. That's fantastic. Always good to have lots of questions to get more useful discussion going. A reminder that the discounted rate is applicable on the iTunes store now, so you don't need a special code or anything. You've just got to take advantage while they're at that low price. Okay, so thank you everybody, and we look forward to seeing you at the next webinar, which will be at the very end of September. So we'll stay tuned and we'll see you all then. Thank you. Bye.